So, here we are, back at the old courthouse again. I never expected we'd be seeing this place so soon into the new year.
Unfortunately, crime does not observe holidays, and neither does the law.
But it would be nice if us lawyers could for once.
Yeah, it's too bad our vacation was cut short, but it must be even worse for Jack. I can't even imagine how he must be feeling. Speaking of which, where the heck is he? The trial will begin soon and we haven't even had a chance to properly talk to him yet.
I believe I can help answer that question. Herr Porter has been discharged from the hospital and should be arriving soon. There's no reason to worry, Fräulein.
Oh my gosh! Prosecutor Gavin!
The one and only. Nice to see you too, Fräulein.
Well, well, if it isn't our very own legal rock star. You know my daughter has all your albums.
Is that so? Obviously, she has an impeccable taste in music. It is a shame that the band had to call it quits, but it's good to see that the spirit of the Gaviners still lives on in the hearts of lovely Fräuleins.
Oh, you!
Ever the charmer, huh? Good to see you again, Prosecutor Gavin. What brings you here?
Oh, I just wanted to catch up a little before the trial.
Yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it?
Indeed it has. 2 months, if I'm not mistaken. Herr Justice, Herr Wright, and a case featuring poker. That does take me back.
Just to clear the air, I hope there are no hard feelings over what happened during our last trial.
It's all water under the bridge to me, Herr Justice. The jurors made the right choice. Besides, the outcome of that case should be celebrated more than anything.
Oh? How so?
You see, Herr Justice, the way that case ended has helped restore some faith in the rule of law among us all.
Some, but not nearly enough.
Yes, there's still a long way to go, unfortunately.
I'm not sure I understand. What are you talking about?
Herr Justice, you haven't handled that many cases yet, so there is something important you should know going forward.
We live in the dark age of the law.
Indeed. The sad truth is that the integrity of our legal system has been in a downward spiral for years now. Our last case was a clear exception from what the public has come to see as the norm. That being defense attorneys, prosecutors, and the police resorting to underhanded tricks and even forged evidence in a blind pursuit of a verdict they want. It's a plague afflicting every aspect of our legal system. The pursuit of truth has fallen second to winning ever since those tragic cases.
And as you know, I myself bear partial responsibility for what has happened, and I have fought long and hard to undo the harm that has been done. After 7 years of painstaking work, the juror system was supposed to bring this plague to an end, but by then, it was too late. While the test run of the juror system succeeded in clearing my name, the fact that it had worked so well upset some very powerful people at the highest echelons of the legal world, and they set out to destroy it. Because in this dark age of the law, such a system could not be allowed to exist. And I'm sad to say they succeeded. The juror system is now dead in all but name, having been wrapped in an endless maze of red tape, and thus becoming nothing more than an obscure footnote in our legal history. But if they think I'm done, they have another thing coming, but all in good time.
They won't get away with it. Daddy will see to that.
Wow, I really had no idea that things had gotten so bad.
Believe me, it's even worse than you could imagine. Only a handful of defense attorneys and prosecutors can be trusted to play fair nowadays. Fortunately, I can count both you and I to be amongst them, Herr Justice.
Thank you, Prosecutor Gavin. I appreciate your trust.
I give credit where credit is due, yeah? I'm very happy to see someone worthy of my trust taking on the role of defense, because this case is quickly turning out to be one of the biggest shows in legal history. The press have really worked themselves up in a frenzy over this case. Masked Master murdered mercilessly, and similar headlines are by the dozen, so I expect the media to have an intense focus on the trial and its outcome. Therefore, it is extremely important that this case is handled by trustworthy people who also know how to deal with publicity. People will be watching, if you catch my drift.
Then I guess it only makes sense that our new chief prosecutor would send their office's resident legal superstar to man the prosecutor's bench.
So how about it, Herr Justice? Feel like you're ready to rock on the big stage with me?
I suppose I'll be just fine. It's good to see Clavier has been able to move on from what happened. At least his ego seems to be doing perfectly okay.
You can do it, Polly. Who knows? Maybe he'll end up becoming a household name. Imagine how cool that would be. We might even get a reality TV show based on our lives.
What sort of strange people would be interested in following the lives of a defense attorney and their family and friends? Especially in this day and age.
Hey, I'd watch it.
Me too.
Of course you two would, but you're biased.
At least it could help make up for missing out on the grand prize.
Yeah, I'm bummed that people never got to see Daddy play.
Oh, don't you worry, Fräulein. Herr Wright may still get his chance. The All-Stars of Legends tournament hasn't been cancelled, just postponed.
Postponed? Even after one of the contestants was killed and the prize money burned to a crisp?
It's not really surprising that the power of money trumps discretion. It's in the best interest of many influential people that the show will go on.
That's showbiz for you, all right.
Besides, the trial has brought tons of additional buzz for the tournament. Now, even little old grannies know all about who's playing and what the prize is. In fact, I hear they're now taking bets on whether Herr Porter is found guilty or not.
I probably shouldn't ask, but what are our odds?
Approximately the same as Herr Wright winning the tournament.
Looks like the odds are ever in our favor.
Well, they're going to be sorry for betting on the wrong horse. No offense to you, Prosecutor Gavin.
None taken, Fräulein. I am certain that the evidence will speak for itself.
Excuse me, Prosecutor Gavin? The defendant has been brought to the courthouse, so we're almost ready to begin.
Looks like your client is here. I should head off to do a sound check before we get this show on the road. It was good talking to you all. Just don't expect me to pull any punches in the courtroom, yeah?
I won't. I look forward to debating the case with you, Prosecutor Gavin.
Good. See you on the stage then, Herr Justice.
Bye, Prosecutor Gavin.
Hey, before I go, you're the defendant's lawyer, right?
Yeah, that's me. Why do you ask?
We're gonna need your signature on this form, sir.
What's this?
Beats me, but the prosecution said it's important that you sign it before the trial.
Looks like people are already after your autograph, Apollo.
Well, if Clavier wants me to sign it, I guess I can.
Polly, shouldn't you read it before signing?
I'm sure it's fine. You know as well as I do that Clavier wouldn't pull any underhanded tricks.
Thanks, that's all I needed. I'll be sure to let the prosecution know.
Hey! What's this I hear about you rubbing elbows with the prosecutor? If y'all are planning on some plea deal shenanigans, I'd very much appreciate having a say.
No worries, Mr. Porter. We were just catching up.
Goodness, are you all right, Jack? You look terrible.
Oh, this? That's no biggie. Could have been much worse. Ever hear about that one guy who got his eye poked out with a playing card? Now that was a nasty mishap. But yeah, I'm about as fine as a man accused of murder can be. What a mess, eh? Sure hope y'all will be able to save my bacon. But seriously though, please do your best. A handsome fella like me don't belong behind bars, especially since I didn't do anything. I reckon I didn't, anyway.
Don't you worry, Jack. Apollo's a bright one. I'm certain he'll prove your innocence.
Fantastic. If there's anything I can do to help y'all out, let me know.
Actually, it would help us immensely if you could tell us what happened in the tournament room that night.
I'd sure love to, but I can hardly recall a single thing. The doc said that the shock to my system gave me a little something called retrograde amnesia. But if I do end up remembering the tiniest bit of info, y'all will be the first people to know.
Great, so we're still going in practically blind. But at least the prosecution shouldn't be doing much better, right? Mr. Porter, it's not that I doubt you, but if you can't remember anything, how can you be sure that you didn't kill the masked stranger?
Apollo, don't even go there.
Whoa, you listen here, Apollo. I had absolutely no reason to off anybody. Least of all the masked stranger. Hell, I'm even one of the few initiated to the masked stranger secret signature.
You know the secret signature?
Ah, yes. The one thing that can be used to verify the stranger as the real deal.
Yeah. I mean, did y'all think I just let the first fellow wearing the stranger's duds waltz upstairs?
So, can you tell us what it is then? I'm dying to know.
I could, but I think hitting my noggin bonked that info right out of my head as well.
Aww.
Bottom line is, I may not remember what happened, but I just know that I didn't kill nobody.
Then that's exactly what we're going to show to the court.
Don't you worry, Jack. With Polly as your defense, there's no way you'll be found guilty.
Well, if you're vouching for him, then I guess I gotta believe it.
Yeah, you better save my friend, Apollo. Otherwise, I'll have to consider replacing you with a more talented attorney. Just kidding. I trust you completely. I even bet $5 on not guilty.
A whole $5, huh?
Ahem! The trial will be starting shortly. If everyone would please take their places.
And that's our cue. Good luck in there, you two. I'll be cheering you on from the gallery.
Guess I'll wait and see if I won't get better acquainted with the hangman soon.
Polly, he's our man. If he can't do it, Clavier can.
Jeez. Guess I really gotta do it now. Okay, let's do this. It's the first case of the new year, and it's a real mess as usual. But whatever happens, I'm not going to let Mr. Porter down. Cords of steel, don't fail me now. Ready or not, here comes justice!
The court is now in session for the trial of Jack Porter. Are the prosecution and the defense ready?
The prosecution is ready to rock, Herr Judge.
The defense is also ready, Your Honor.
Good. Then let's get this trial underway. I do have to say, being called back to work on my first day off in a long time does not make me too happy. I had plans to marathon the World Curling League with my wife. If only people had the decency not to commit crimes during my vacation time. I suppose I'll just have to show them what happens by swinging my gavel extra hard today.
Why is he glaring in our direction? Whatever happened to innocent until proven guilty?
Regardless, it's high time we begin. Prosecutor Gavin, please give the court your opening statement.
Very well, Herr Judge. Early in the morning hours of New Year's Day, a most heinous crime took place inside the tournament room of the Royal Flush Casino. A crime that robbed the life of the poker legend known only as the Masked Stranger. The police have since confirmed that the identity of the man behind the mask is Rex House, the current owner of the Royal Flush Casino and supposedly one of the best poker players in the world. He was to participate in the annual Poker All-Stars Legends tournament on the very day he was killed.
Wait, the masked stranger was Mr. House all along?
Guess he had us all fooled until the end.
The important thing, however, is not who Herr House's alter ego was, but the fact that he was murdered. As for the culprit, the prosecution will show that the one who killed the victim was none other than Herr Jack Porter, head of security at Herr House's casino. The cause of Herr House's death has been determined as a gunshot wound to the back of the head. The prosecution would like to submit the autopsy report to the court as evidence.
Very well. The court accepts the autopsy report into evidence.
For further details about the initial investigation, the prosecution calls the lovely Fräulein in charge to testify.
Very well. Let the witness take the stand.
Please state your name and occupation for the court, Fräulein.
But, Detective Sky, please refrain from leaving crumbs all over the witness stand.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, but if I stop snacking, I'm going to grit my teeth so hard, they'll register it on the Richter scale. All because I have to see this glamorous fop of a prosecutor so early into the year.
Oh, Fräulein Detective, how can you be so cold?
Detective Sky, please just focus on giving us your testimony.
Okay, just give me a moment to get it all out.
Ouch! Hey, why am I the one in the line of fire?
You know, Polly, with that red and white getup, you do make a pretty good target.
There. Much better. Emma Sky, detective in charge of the scene, reporting for duty.
Very good, Fräulein Detective. Next, could you please recite your findings for me?
For you? Absolutely not. But I will do so for the benefit of the court.
Okay, Polly, time to pay attention.
You don't have to tell me. I mean, we're finally about to get some concrete information about what happened. Now let's just see what we're up against.
It was early on New Year's Day when dispatch informed us of a possible homicide at the Royal Flush Casino. Upon arriving at the scene, we found the victim, Mr. Rex House, who lay dead by the door of the tournament room. He had been shot in the back of the head. The murder weapon has been determined as the casino-issued .38 caliber pistol belonging to the defendant. The weapon itself was found at the crime scene next to the unconscious defendant. There had also been a fire in the tournament room, but we believe this is unrelated to the murder. It had been put out by the time we got there. Regardless, a fire alarm went off shortly after we arrived at the scene, prompting the evacuation of the entire casino. Since only the defendant and the victim had access to the scene, there can be no other culprit. I'd say this case is pretty open and shut.
Looks like we have our work cut out for us.
Then it's about time we roll up our sleeves. Even if things look bad, we cannot take anything at face value for now.
Yeah, if Jack's innocent, then there's gotta be some sort of flaw in that testimony. We just have to find it.
Mr. Justice, you may begin your cross-examination.
It was early on New Year's Day when dispatch informed us of a possible homicide at the Royal Flush Casino.
Hold it! The police showed up pretty soon after the scene was discovered. How did you manage to arrive so fast?
We were in the neighborhood. New Year's can get quite rowdy, so the chief has units posted near some key locations, the Royal Flush Casino being one of them. As you can see, the system works like a charm.
So it seems. And what did you find once you arrived?
Upon arriving at the scene, we found the victim, Mr. Rex House, who lay dead by the door of the tournament room. He had been shot in the back of the head.
Hold it! Can you tell us a little more about the victim?
At the time of discovery, he was wearing the signature outfit of the poker legend known as the Masked Stranger, consisting of a custom-made suit and mask. Both seemed to be tailored to fit the victim's build perfectly, therefore we concluded that the Masked Stranger is, or was, Mr. House.
That would be the obvious explanation, certainly. All right, so what about the murder weapon?
The murder weapon has been determined as the casino-issued .38 caliber pistol belonging to the defendant.
Hold it! And you're certain that the gun found at the scene is the murder weapon?
Positive. The ballistic markings on the bullet match the gun perfectly.
And how did you determine that the gun belongs to Mr. Porter?
Simple. Each gun issued to casino security officers has a serial number. According to the casino records, this gun was assigned to the defendant. Furthermore, the defendant's holster was empty when we discovered him. The murder weapon is definitely the defendant's gun. No ifs or buts about it.
Guess I won't be objecting to this statement then. Were there any fingerprints found in the gun?
We couldn't lift any prints. Although that's not surprising considering Mr. Porter was wearing gloves at the time of the murder.
Rats. Just to exhaust all the possibilities, I don't suppose it's possible that Mr. House could have shot himself?
With the defendant's gun? Mr. Justice, seriously? The answer is no. The lack of gunpowder burns on the back of the mask indicate Mr. House was shot further than an arm's length away. Not to mention the fact that he was shot in the back of his head. Did you even read the autopsy report?
Of course! I was just asking.
Holly, maybe you shouldn't ask something that hurts our credibility?
There goes that avenue of attack as well. So, where did you find the murder weapon, Detective Skye?
The weapon itself was found at the crime scene next to the unconscious defendant.
Hold it! Could you please tell the court where the defendant and the victim were found inside the room?
Sure, I've got a diagram here showing just that. The victim was found lying face down by the doorway here, facing away from the defendant. The unconscious defendant was found slumped with his back against the mixing table here. The gun was found next to him here.
Why was Mr. Porter unconscious?
I am unable to say for sure, but it looked like Mr. Porter had been physically assaulted. All of you can plainly see the defendant's black eye right now.
Well, it's not like Jack would punch himself in the face. Just what happened in that room? I see. Was there anything else about the scene that's worth mentioning?
Yes, actually, there had also been a fire in the tournament room, but we believe this is unrelated to the murder. It had been put out by the time we got there.
Hold it! Unrelated to the murder? How did you reach that conclusion?
Both the victim and the defendant were mostly unharmed by the fire, although Mr. Porter seems to have suffered some after effects of smoke inhalation. However, there was no evidence of the victim having inhaled smoke. The implication is that the fire began only after the murder.
But wasn't Mr. House wearing a mask at that time?
That's right! What do you make of that, Detective?
She has a point. However, our testing showed that the mask wouldn't have stopped smoke from entering the victim's lungs.
So both the murder and the fire took place inside a hotel and nobody noticed? What has the world come to?
There's a good reason for that, Your Honor. The tournament room is designed to be completely soundproof. As long as the room's doors were closed, nobody could have heard the gunshot, or seen the fire for that matter.
Ah, yes, that sounds more reasonable.
Furthermore, it turns out that the fire alarms had been switched off for the duration of the hotel's fireworks show. Apparently, last year a stray firework had caused the evacuation of the entire casino, and they wanted to avoid that happening again.
Is that why I couldn't get the fire alarm to work? Talk about gross negligence of public safety. Do you have any idea what caused the fire in the tournament room, Detective Skye?
The reason for the fire is still unknown. We have people from the arson unit working on it as we speak. Regardless, a fire alarm went off shortly after we arrived at the scene, prompting the evacuation of the entire casino.
Hold it! What can you tell me about the evacuation?
All we know thus far is that someone tripped a fire alarm inside the casino after the fireworks show ended.
So it wasn't because of me pressing the button earlier?
The evacuation itself was quite orderly, although the people in the tournament floor had to be airlifted out of there. This was because the fire exit was unusable due to a broken door handle. Luckily, the fire alarm turned out to be a false one.
If there's something positive to be said about this case, I'm glad no one was hurt by the fire.
Either way, the fire shouldn't make a huge difference in this case.
And why is that?
Since only the defendant and the victim had access to the scene, there can be no other culprit. I'd say this case is pretty open and shut.
Hold it! How can you be so sure that only Mr. House and Mr. Porter could access the room?
The door to the tournament room can only be unlocked using a special security code known only by two people, the casino's owner and the head of security. Those would be Mr. House and Mr. Porter, respectively. From what we've gathered, there was a cocktail party held in the tournament room earlier, after which the room was locked by Mr. Porter. All guests staying at the tournament floor were accounted for after he locked the doors, with the sole exception of the masked stranger. But witnesses told us that the stranger never even showed up to the cocktail party, which makes sense considering Mr. House attended the very same party himself.
By the way, Detective Sky, how was the police able to access the players' rooms during the evacuation?
The people at the hotel lobby gave us the emergency master key card, which allowed us to get the VIP elevator working and access the tournament floor. They had to break it out of a sealed case first, too.
Okay, so that card definitely wasn't used before that point.
With this in mind, and knowing that only the defendant and the victim could access the room after it was locked, the only possibility is that the defendant was the one who shot the victim.
Is that so? Because there's a problem! And with that, it's time for our counterattack! Objection! Detective Sky, I believe I just found a fatal flaw in your testimony.
A flaw? Please enlighten me, Mr. Justice.
Certainly. I have every reason to believe that the defendant and the victim were not the only ones with access to the crime scene. In fact, anyone on the tournament floor could have entered the room, even after it had already been locked once.
And what do you base this claim on, Mr. Justice?
This photo that I took after putting out the fire in the tournament room. You see, I happened to walk past the tournament room a little after midnight and discovered the scene with the doors already wide open!
Order! Wait, Mr. Justice, are you saying that you were at the casino where the murder took place?
Yes, Your Honor. I was there as a guest of one of the tournament contestants, Mr. Wright.
That's right! Polly saved everyone from the fire that night!
Huh. I had a hunch I had forgotten to mention something.
Wow. Way to make me feel insignificant. And after I put out the fire, too!
You certainly have a habit of finding yourself close to crime scenes, Mr. Justice.
I swear I'm not doing it on purpose, Your Honor. Regardless, my point still stands. If the door was open, anyone could have entered the crime scene.
That's a whole lot of people, I'd assume.
Alright, let's clear something up. Not just anyone had access to the tournament floor. Only Mr. Porter, Mr. House, and the 7 guests staying on the floor were able to use the VIP elevator. Even we, the police, had to get an emergency key card broken out of its sealed container to get to the tournament floor.
Detective Sky, for the benefit of the court, could you please list the guests who were staying on the tournament floor?
Of course. Please allow me to show you on this map. According to the booking information we received from the casino, Mr. Wright, his daughter Trucy Wright, and Mr. Justice were staying in room number 1. Mr. Hector Nash was staying in room number 2. The masked stranger was staying in room number 3. Mr. Flint Rockwell was staying in room number 4. And Miss Felicia Garnett was staying in room number 5. I should also add that, not counting the defendant and the victim, only Mr. Justice, Miss Wright, and Mr. Nash were present on the floor at the time of our arrival.
Thank you for the clarification, Detective Sky.
Anytime, Your Honor.
That's a pretty short list of suspects. Wouldn't you agree, Herr Justice?
Maybe so. But theoretically, someone else could still have entered the tournament room if it was unlocked.
Fine, Mr. Justice. I'll give you that one. But it doesn't really matter if the door was opened only after the crime took place.
Then I suppose you can tell the court exactly when the door to the tournament room was opened? You did say that Mr. Porter locked the room after the cocktail party.
I'm not sure, actually.
In that case, how can you claim Mr. Porter was the only person who could have had the opportunity to commit this crime?
But that's...
Very good, Herr Justice. But on the contrary, do you have any evidence to show that the door was open before the murder?
My evidence is logic. As you recall, Detective Sky testified that the door to the tournament room could only be opened by a code known to two people, the victim and the defendant. However, both of them were found inside the tournament room, one dead and the other unconscious. If neither of them was able to open the door after the murder, then the only logical explanation is that the door had to be opened before the murder.
Order! Order in the court! If Mr. Justice is correct, then our list of possible suspects has just expanded vastly.
Great work, Polly. Looks like Emma's at a loss for words.
It seems we managed to catch her off guard, but the look on Clavier's face tells me he's about to shut us down real quick.
Well, well, well. Looks like you could use some help there, Fraulein.
Stop patronizing me! I don't need some knight in shining armor to rescue me. Least of all, you!
Very well. But I will do so anyway for the sake of the prosecution's case. I have to hand it to Herr Justice. It's a bold move to propose a theory that essentially makes him a suspect as well. After all, by Herr Justice's own admission, he's the one who discovered the crime scene, yeah?
Well, I suppose that's one way to look at it. Ugh, I completely let that one slide by me.
Mr. Justice, I swear, if you are the one behind cutting my holiday short.
As if. Polly's all about solving crimes, not committing them.
I believe we should give Herr Justice the benefit of the doubt now, Herr Judge. So, Herr Justice, you are proposing that somebody other than the defendant and the victim went to the tournament room after it was locked and before you discovered the scene, yeah? While the possibility may be there, do you have any evidence that shows that a third person went to the scene?
Oh, that's right. I got so worked up I forgot that Mr. Justice actually has to back up his argument. I suppose my judging skills may have gotten a bit rusty during the holiday.
In a single day? Come to think of it, that would explain a lot.
Either way, Mr. Justice, please present evidence that shows a third party entered the crime scene before you discovered it. If you have any, that is.
Evidence? I've got it right here! Take that! There's something that's been rubbing me the wrong way since the night of the crime. The police were rather quick to arrive to the scene, but who was the person who first reported the murder? By the time I found the scene, the police must have already been on their way, and I certainly didn't call them myself.
We're not sure, actually. The report was sent to us via an anonymous message, and none of the guests we interviewed said they had contacted the police.
But clearly someone had to have seen the crime scene in order to be able to report it. And I think I can tell who it was, based on this. This lighter was found at the scene of the crime. But it's not just any lighter. It's made out of solid gold and is the property of one of the guests staying on the tournament floor, Mr. Hector Nash, as evidenced by the initials HN on it. Furthermore, as Detective Sky stated, Mr. Nash was one of the few people on the tournament floor at the time of the crime. Your Honor, the defense would like to call Mr. Nash to the stand to explain how his lighter ended up inside the tournament room.
Very well. We shall take a small recess in order to summon the witness.
That won't be necessary, Herr Judge.
Oh?
I had a feeling that Herr Justice might wish to hear from Herr Nash, so I had him brought to the courthouse earlier.
Clavier was expecting this to happen? That's a little concerning, but I can't back down now. Thank you for your foresight, Prosecutor Gavin. I look forward to hearing what the witness has to say.
Think Mr. Nash will be more willing to talk now that he's a witness?
We can only hope. And if not, we'll stick to our tried and true methods.
Very well. Bailiff, please bring in the witness.
Hey! What's the big idea? I thought I was done giving statements for you people already. You told me there was a very high probability I wouldn't need to bother getting on the stand.
Guess we won't be doing this the easy way then.
Mr. Nash, You've been summoned here as a witness because Mr. Justice would like to ask you some questions.
Seriously? Of all the possible permutations, I don't see why I had to be the poor sod you had to drag in, but whatever. Let's just get this over with. The less time I have to waste answering your questions, the better.
Very well. Witness, please state your name and occupation.
Hector Nash, PhD. Engineer, statistician, and professional poker player. In that order. Now what do you want?
Let's start with a simple question. Mr. Nash, is this your lighter?
Oh, so it's been in your grubby hands all this time. That is to say, yes, that is my lighter. What of it?
Well, this lighter decisively proves that you saw the crime scene.
That's what this is all about. Oh, for Pete's sake. I can't believe you people would waste everyone's time on useless inquiries like this.
You can't make that call, Mr. Nash. This could be very important for us.
Really? I can tell you all right now exactly why that lighter is just another meaningless correlation, signifying nothing.
Care to give some testimony about just that then, Mr. Nash?
Fine. Whatever gets me off this damn stand faster. I was precisely on time for the cocktail party, unlike some people here. After the party, I went back to my room. I only left for the occasional smoke break. I was just heading out for a smoke when I heard the commotion in the hall. That's when I found these two by the doorway of the tournament room. I must have been startled and dropped my lighter when the police burst in moments later.
That sure was short and sweet.
All the easier for us to work with. After all, this testimony shouldn't be too hard to crack.
Mr. Justice, you may begin your cross-examination.
I was precisely on time for the cocktail party, unlike some people here.
Hold it! So how early were you exactly?
I was there right when Porter opened up the tournament room, so from the very start.
Okay. Did you see anyone else there at the time?
No, it was just us two until the others started waddling in. Late, I might add.
Okay. And what did you do after the party had ended?
After the party, I went back to my room. I only left for the occasional smoke break.
Hold it! Really? That sounds like an interesting way to choose to spend your time at a luxury hotel.
Not all of us are precious social butterflies. I value peace and quiet over inane chit-chat. Besides, I've been to the casino every year since the All-Star Legends first began. I've seen everything it has to offer, and frankly, it leaves a lot to be desired. So, I decided to do something more worthwhile with my time.
Such as?
Play video poker to further develop my perfect poker system, among other projects that could prove lucrative.
And that's all you did?
Other than smoking the occasional cig, yeah, pretty much.
So you still had your lighter after the cocktail party?
Obviously. I need something to light up, don't I? That cheapskate house never stocked any matches in the rooms anyway.
Well, he fessed up to that surprisingly easily. One more question. Where did you go to smoke?
The tournament floor balcony. It was an optimal location for my purposes, since all the rooms are non-smoking areas. However, nothing of interest happened during my trips. At least, not until the last one.
Please elaborate on that, Mr. Nash.
I was just heading out for a smoke when I heard the commotion in the hall. That's when I found these two by the doorway of the tournament room.
Hold it! So, the first time you saw the tournament room after the cocktail party was at that time?
As logic would dictate.
Very interesting. Considering your lighter was found inside the tournament room.
You're sounding like a broken record there, attorney. Have you forgotten that I was the one that found you and the girl standing next to you inside the room with the body by your feet?
That doesn't mean we had anything to do with it.
I could say the same thing. The lighter doesn't incriminate me in the slightest. Speaking of which, can I have it back already?
No. That is evidence for the case, witness.
You've gotta be kidding. Then I suggest you finish this case fast. Oh, the withdrawal is killing me.
Well, he certainly appears unfazed. So, care to explain once again how your lighter ended up on the tournament room's floor, Mr. Nash?
Really? Do I have to spell it out for you again? Ugh! I must have been startled and dropped my lighter when the police burst in moments later.
Hold it! That's it? Seems awfully convenient for you.
Convenient or not, it's the only time the lighter could have ended up there. Sorry to disappoint everyone with the most mundane resolution imaginable.
Hector's clearly lying here. Right now, I should focus on proving that the lighter was in the tournament room much earlier than that. And I think I know how. Objection! Mr. Nash, I would have to say that the probability that your story is true comes down to a big round 0.
And what kind of logic did you use to arrive at this result? If you cannot prove the lighter was dropped earlier than when I said it was,
then allow me to do exactly that. I know the lighter was in the room before you claim you dropped it, because I happened to step on it. I'm afraid it cracked when I did.
You what? That lighter wasn't cheap, you know. I expect full compensation for it later.
I'm sorry for breaking it, but it does prove something very important. The lighter was already on the floor of the tournament room before I arrived. Mr. Nash, this proves that you had to have seen the scene inside the tournament room way before than you say you did.
Gah! Blasted attorney!
Nice one, Polly. Let's see him explain that.
Witness, for your sake, I hope you're done telling us tales.
Fine. If you must know, it wasn't the first time I saw the scene that night.
Then please tell the court about when you actually did.
Guess I have to now. All because of one unforeseen variable.
That's the first layer of lies broken. Perhaps now we can finally get down to business.
Okay, you got me. I did see the scene earlier. I was heading out for a smoke on the balcony when I noticed something was off with the tournament room and went to take a look. When I looked inside, I saw the masked stranger and Porter looking lifeless. I was shocked, so I must have dropped my lighter. I ran back to my room to notify the police. After I returned, I saw you two shouting your heads off by the tournament room door. You know the rest.
Now that Mr. Nash has admitted to having seen the scene earlier, it's time we find out what else he's hiding.
Yeah, let's turn up the heat.
Okay, you got me. I did see the scene earlier.
Hold it! Then why did you lie about it, Mr. Nash?
It is my understanding that the person who discovers the crime scene comes under suspicion with about 100% certainty. Out of those people, an unreasonable amount have been convicted for the crime, since the police and prosecutors lacked a clear perp to pin it on. Since they go with the easy way out, I'm more than justified in doing the same to cover my own bases. And even if I can tell you all right now that I'm not the perp, I just can't be bothered to sit through all those questionings and pointless cross-examinations. But I guess I have no choice now.
That's right. You'll just have to bear with us for now. Sooner or later, the truth will find a way to make itself known.
Ha! That's rich coming from a lawyer.
Then how about you tell us what really happened?
I was heading out for a smoke on the balcony when I noticed something was off with the tournament room and went to take a look.
Hold it! What was it that you saw?
Obviously, I saw the tournament room door was open. And knowing that $100 million was sitting inside unguarded, that's more than likely to raise a few eyebrows, wouldn't you say?
And when did you see this?
It was 11 minutes past midnight. I knew there was a high probability that people would ask me that question later, so I committed it to memory. But that's not all I saw. Oh no. When I looked inside, I saw the masked stranger and Porter looking lifeless. I was shocked, so I must have dropped my lighter.
Hold it! What exactly did you see, Mr. Nash?
Both of them were lying there, still and dead-looking. The masked stranger in the doorway with a hole in the back of the head, and the security guy slumped against the mixing table.
And then what did you do?
I had my lighter already in hand, because I was jonesing for a smoke. It had been a few hours since my last break, after all. But I guess the initial shock made me forget about it all and drop the lighter by the doorway. Either way, I wasn't about to stick around, so there was only one thing I could do. I ran back to my room to notify the police.
Hold it! And you reported the crime anonymously?
I did. Again, I didn't want to get tangled up in the case any more than I had to. After all, I did my civic duty, and this is how I'm rewarded. Should have just minded my own business. But I guess I never learn.
I suppose that clears up the question of who alerted the police. Why didn't you call the fire department while you were at it?
The fire department. What the hell would I call them for? It was a murder scene, so of course I called the police. Would you call the pizza guy to take you to the hospital?
So the fire must have started after Hector had witnessed the scene.
Anyway, to sum it all up. After I returned, I saw you two shouting your heads off by the tournament room door. You know the rest.
Hold it! So that would be myself and Miss Trucy Wright.
Incredible deduction there, attorney. I sure didn't see anybody else by the time the cops burst in and cordoned off the scene.
Thank you. That's all I wanted to hear from you for now.
About damn time.
So, Mr. Justice, what did this testimony ultimately accomplish?
Plenty. You see, we have now firmly established that the door to the tournament room was opened at some point after the cocktail party. And that there were, in fact, people who went to the crime scene around the time of the murder. Such as Mr. Nash!
God damn it! I saw this coming a mile away. I called it. Gah!
Order! Mr. Justice, are you formally accusing the witness this early in the case?
I am not, Your Honor. I am merely pointing out the fact that Mr. Porter is not the only one who could have committed this crime.
By that logic, there's approximately 66.6% chance that I didn't do it, and the killer is one of you two.
We would never do something like that.
And what exactly makes your claim of innocence more valid than mine? Do the math, for crying out loud.
You had better think this through carefully, Herr Justice. The odds are really not on your side today.
Damn it. I should not push our luck for now, at least until we have more evidence.
I suppose that means our witness can leave the stand for now.
What a waste of my valuable time.
Well then, if Herr Justice is done with his questioning, I believe it's about time we all stop theorizing about possibilities. Certainly, the door to the tournament room was found open. The prosecution believes that there is a simple explanation for this. Herr House was reaching for the door when he was shot. As his body fell, his arm hit the door handle and the force of the impact pushed the door open. This is the simplest explanation and makes the most sense.
Do you have any evidence to back that up?
I do not have direct evidence, I must admit. However, while in theory other people could have had the opportunity to commit this crime, the most important question remains. Who was the one that actually acted on that opportunity and committed the crime?
As I've said, there's enough evidence to cast reasonable doubt on Mr. Porter being the only person who could have committed this crime.
Indeed. If only we had a way to see exactly what went down in the tournament room. Oh, that's right. We do.
What?
You see, the murder was captured by the most damning witness of all, the security camera.
What?
No way!
The murder was caught on camera? Why, I could have handed down my verdict based on that alone! Why didn't you present this evidence immediately, Prosecutor Gavin? We could have finished this trial in minutes!
Because that's not my style, Herr Judge. To me, a proper trial is like a good song. It needs to have that sweet build-up to the solo that blows you away.
Oh man, this could be really bad for us. Your Honor, we should at least watch the footage first before we jump to any conclusions.
Yes. I suppose we should. The court accepts the security tape into evidence. Bailiff, please have the security footage projected for the court.
Right away, Your Honor.
I will start by saying that due to an unfortunate oversight in the settings of the casino's new surveillance system, all footage from the previous year, including New Year's Eve, was automatically deleted on New Year's Day. But luckily for us, the most incriminating part remains, since it was recorded in the early hours of January 1st. Now, please pay attention. When the footage starts at midnight, we can see Herr House standing in the tournament room dressed as the masked stranger. The defendant enters shortly after. Notice how his gun is already drawn, a clear sign of premeditation. The door closes behind the defendant and locks tight, as evidenced by the red light on the panel. Next, we see the defendant point his gun at the victim, holding him at gunpoint for a good while until...
Huh? The video just turns to static?
Yes. Unfortunately, the video feed from the wireless cameras in question was somehow corrupted past this point, so we cannot see the exact moment when the trigger was pulled. But perhaps that's for the best. As you can see, the security video all but proves the defendant's guilt. Why else would he be pointing the gun at the victim?
This is indeed compelling evidence. Mr. Justice, if you're somehow going to contest this, your rebuttal had better be just as good.
Well, that's clearly Jack on the tape. There is no doubt about that.
Holly, I just know Jack couldn't have killed anyone, no matter what the tape shows.
But if the footage isn't showing murder, then what exactly are we looking at?
I just don't know. But you have to come up with something.
Mr. Justice, what are your thoughts?
Oh man, what do I say? Your Honor, there is a problem with this tape!
Oh? And what kind of problem might that be, Mr. Justice?
The tape cannot be showing the real moment of the murder, because the scene here does not match with where the bodies were found. Mr. House was shot in the back of the head, while in the tape, he is standing in front of Mr. Porter. Prosecutor Gavin, you know full well that this footage doesn't tell us the full story. For example, there was obviously a fight between the defendant and the victim at some point. Your own detective testified that Mr. Porter was physically assaulted, and all of you can see him right now. This is also proven by the fact that Mr. Porter has no visible injuries on this tape. Yet, he was found with a black eye.
Yeah, who knows what else we could be missing?
Yet you cannot argue against the fact that your client is seen entering the room with his gun in hand.
He's right. I have to give this some thought. Why would Jack enter the tournament room with his gun drawn? Aha! Prosecutor Gavin, have you considered the following? Mr. Porter is the casino's head of security. It's his job, among other things, to guard the grand prize of the All-Stars Legends tournament. The masked stranger was essentially trespassing at the time, since there was no way for Mr. Porter to tell it was actually Mr. House under that suit. Ergo, this is not a premeditated murder, but rather Mr. Porter doing his job as security, Holding the stranger at gunpoint was simply a means of apprehension. This would also explain Mr. Porter's lack of motive. A motive which, by the way, the prosecution has failed to establish.
I concede that there has been some difficulty in establishing a motive for Herr Porter. However, even if this was a case of the defendant doing his job, mere trespassing is not a crime to warrant the use of lethal force.
True, however, we must not forget that Mr. House attacked Mr. Porter. Based on the fact there were no additional injuries on Mr. House in the autopsy, I'd say Mr. Porter was subjected to a one-sided beating.
Are you suggesting that this is a case of justified self-defense then, Herr Forehead? Because I hate to remind you, but it was Herr Porter who first drew his gun at the victim. He clearly had the upper hand from the very start.
Oh no, not the forehead thing again. I really hoped we had moved past that.
Before you start justifying Herr Porter's actions as self-defense, I should also remind you that lethal shot was not fired in a close-quarters brawl. Instead, Herr House was shot to the back of his head from a distance, implying that he was fleeing from Herr Porter at the time. Thus, under these circumstances, the defendant's actions would constitute unlawful use of deadly force. Especially considering Herr House was shot in the head and not somewhere that would merely incapacitate him.
That would certainly make this a homicide in the eyes of the law.
Oh, damn it!
Holly, we need those cords of steel right now! Say something!
You seem quite troubled, Herr Forehead. Why don't I help you out? In honor of the new year, I would like to offer you a one-time limited deal.
Huh?
It's simple, really. If the defendant pleads guilty right now, the prosecution will drop the murder charge in favor of a manslaughter charge. And I'm sure Herr Judge will be willing to grant some leniency as well. Otherwise, Mr. Porter's charge will remain as murder, along with its associated penalty.
Clavier has us in a pretty bad spot, but I'm not about to start accepting any kind of shifty deals. Not going to happen, Prosecutor Gavin.
And why is that, Herr Forehead?
Because I believe in the innocence of my client. And if I accept such a deal, then we will never really get to the truth of this case.
Good. I thought you might say that. In that case, the deal is off. I hope for your client's sake that you made the right call.
What's up with Clavier? He was acting really strange there.
I know. He's never done something like that before.
I'd like to leave the court with one more piece of evidence to erase all doubt whether the killing in this case could have been lawful. And that is this audio recording of the victim's final moments.
Wait, what? Where did you get that?
The tournament was going to be televised, so naturally there was recording equipment present, such as this TV microphone. It would seem that during the fight between the defendant and the victim, the microphone in the tournament room started recording. Most likely this was caused by the defendant being shoved against the mixing table. Shall we have a listen?
Yes, please play the recording for the court.
Huh? Wait a minute!
And there you have it. The horrified cry of Rex House only moments before he was shot.
That was Mr. House? It sounded far more like those newfangled family computers.
That is easy to explain, Herr Judge. The masked stranger was known to use a voice modulator to conceal their real voice. Here is what the prosecution believes happened. Somehow, Herr House must have fought off Herr Porter by punching him. Their brawl sent Porter back onto the mixing table and started the recording. Herr House then attempted to flee the scene by running towards the door. That's when Herr Porter shot the victim to the back of the head, just before passing out. The victim's falling body then pushed the tournament room's door open.
The defendant passed out after the crime just like that? That sounds rather strange to me.
That can also be explained easily enough, Herr Judge. It turns out that Herr Porter suffers from severe hemophobia, that is, fear of blood. Many who suffer from the condition are known to faint at the mere sight of blood. The fact that Mr. Porter likely brawled with the victim moments before only made him more susceptible to passing out.
Ah, I see. If only more criminals had this condition, then the police would have no problem catching them red-handed.
Hey! Jack hasn't been found guilty just yet, Your Honor!
And that's all. The prosecution has explained everything there is to this. Case closed.
Well, that would require my verdict first. But I believe with all the evidence...
Hold it! Wait! Hold your horses, y'all!
Huh? What's Jack up to now?
That there tape has a problem.
I'm afraid the tape doesn't lie, Herr Porter.
Just hear me out. Hearing that tape jogged my memory. And now I can say with certainty that the voice on that tape cannot be Mr. House. Because Mr. House is definitely not the masked stranger.
But Mr. House had the suit and mask that fit him perfectly, didn't he?
Yeah, true. But he lacked the most important thing. The masked stranger's secret signature. I knew that stranger was an imposter from the moment he opened his mouth. Paulo, you know what I'm getting at, right?
Could it be? Is the masked stranger's signature actually? But if that's the case, we just found an entirely new mystery! Your Honor, I believe Mr. Porter is telling the truth. The voice on this tape cannot belong to Mr. House.
Oh? And why is that, Mr. Justice?
If Mr. Porter realized that the masked stranger he saw was a phony after they began talking, it makes sense that the signature of the masked stranger is actually related to their modulated voice.
That's right. The stranger's unique voice print is impossible to replicate.
Interesting. But how do we know that the defendant is not just lying to cover for himself?
Mr. Prosecutor, I swear on my mama's grave that the voice is the key. And if that ain't enough, then take a look at this. This is one of the biggest secrets of the poker world, the masked stranger's signature verifier. It allows us, in the know, to separate imposters from the real deal by comparing voice prints the mask makes. If it matches the stranger, this device makes a nice little ding.
Didn't we see it in action when the stranger first arrived?
Now that you mention it, I remember it as well.
That sounds awfully convenient for you, Herr Porter.
Convenient or not, I'm telling you the truth.
This is going nowhere fast. Herr Forehead, perhaps you could try helping your client out? With evidence?
Oh, of course! Mr. Porter, just now as the tape was played, there was a sound coming from your direction, wasn't there? Was that from the signature checker device?
It sure was. It's been in my pocket since yesterday. The truth be told, I forgot I had it until it chimed.
And we heard that very same sound on this tape moments after the stranger cried out, just before the shot was fired. I don't know where this will lead, but I feel like it is the crucial first step towards the truth in this case. Your Honor, it is the defense's opinion that in order to settle this, we need to examine the voice print of the mask Mr. House was wearing at the time of his death.
Very well. Bailiff, have the detectives examine the victim's mask at once.
Yes, Your Honor.
Here it comes, the moment of truth.
Your Honor, the detectives have finished their examination of the mask.
And? Did the voice print match?
Your Honor, the detectives said they looked all over the mask, but they were unable to find any kind of voice modulator in it at all.
But what?
Yes!
Wow, Polly! That switcheroo was one for the highlight reel!
What does this mean?
Your Honor, as we have just found out, the mask Mr. House was wearing could not produce the masked stranger's signature voice, or any other kind of modulated voice for that matter. And yet, somehow, such a voice can still be heard on this tape.
Perhaps I may have overvalued the importance of this tape. In fact, it's not unreasonable to argue that the microphone could have just recorded the masked stranger's voice from the tournament floor hallway.
That sounds fair enough. After all, there is no way to really tell where the sound came from.
The microphone must have caught the sound from outside? Is that really possible? That's simply impossible, Prosecutor Gavin.
What?
Please recall Detective Sky's testimony.
So both a murder and a fire took place inside a hotel and nobody noticed? What has the world come to?
There's a good reason for that, Your Honor. The tournament room is designed to be completely soundproof. As long as the room's doors were closed, nobody could have heard the gunshot, or seen the fire for that matter.
If the tournament room is completely soundproof, then there is no way that the masked stranger's voice was picked up by accident. Furthermore, the prosecution claimed that the door to the hallway was opened by Mr. House's body only after he was shot. So what this tape really tells us is that the real masked stranger must have been at the crime scene at the time of the murder!
Order! Order! Order in the court! If the defense's claim is correct, then we must hear from this real masked stranger immediately. Does the prosecution have any objections?
The prosecution does not.
Very well. Bailiff, send for the masked stranger at once.
Your Honor, if I may interrupt, there is a tiny little problem with that. If Mr. House is not the masked stranger, then I'm afraid that we have no idea who or where the real masked stranger is at the moment.
What?
Naturally, we will begin a search for them immediately.
I see. Due to our current circumstances, I believe we have no choice but to adjourn the court for today.
Yes! Saved by the bell! The defense certainly has no objections to this.
We did it, Polly! We go!
Bravo, Herr Justice. Bravo. That's how you build up a crescendo and leave them begging for an encore. Nothing I can do now but amp up the investigation. Be ready, because I promise that tomorrow the show will blow the roof off this courthouse.
Indeed. In the meantime, I strongly urge the prosecution and the defense to look further into the true masked stranger's movements on the night of the murder in order to find out how they are involved in this case. For now, court is adjourned.
None of us were really expecting that revelation. But with a single piece of evidence, we finally had our third person at the crime scene. The true masked stranger. But their involvement only caused more questions to arise. Why was Mr. House posing as the masked stranger? Who is really hiding behind the stranger's mask? And why would they be in the tournament room at the time of the murder? I suppose the time for answers will come. Eventually. However, the only thing we can do right now is to look into the movements of the true masked stranger and talk to potential witnesses. If only the rest of Jack's memory would return, perhaps he'd be able to tell us what we need to know. But for now, it's up to us to find out the truth. Watch out, stranger. Here comes justice!